Many South Africans, including many young people, are crying out for jobs. Tonight we're looking at what the Labour Minister is doing about it. Minister Thulas Nxesi delivered his first budget vote speech as Employment and Labour Minister in Parliament this morning. One of the things he focused on was the minimum wage of 3,700 Rand, which you'll recall became law in November last year. He says unlike the doom and gloom predictions, it has not led to wholesale retrenchments. Minister Nxesi joins us from our Seapoint studio now. Minister, thank you very much. So it sounds like most companies, let's start off there, are in fact complying with the minimum wage.
Well, in terms of the reports which we have received, is that the majority of the employers have started complying with the minimum wage. In fact, those doomsdayers who were predicting that there will be massive retrenchments as a result of that, we have not seen it. We were talking about lots of disputes which would arise. We have not seen that. Instead, just about 7% of the employers, we see that they have not complied, but we don't know the reasons. And these are the employers across the different sectors. And we're waiting for the report from the commission which deals with the minimum wage to tell us what are the exact reasons and so on, so that we can engage with those employers. We're going to look at them case by case. We can't take a blanket approach.
Minister, has enough time passed for you to be certain that the prediction of job losses is completely wrong? Of course, some companies may not be employing new workers as well. There may be a slowdown because of the minimum wage.
We don't see that evidence. And we have not been told of such evidence until we have been shown the evidence of that. And then it's only then that we would say it has had a negative impact. In fact, the Commission is still going to submit a report which says what is the impact of the minimum wage. So we can't just be talking anecdotally on this particular matter.
Yeah. Some people would say that maybe there hasn't been much of an effect because in many sectors a form of a minimum wage was in place. The unions wanted higher. Do you think 3,000 Rand 700 is right for us in South Africa right now?
Come again?
Do you believe that the figure, because remember many wanted higher, including the unions, of 3,700 Rand, is that right for us as South Africa as a minimum wage?
No. We believe that as a start, because you had to have a start somewhere, it might not be enough. But as we evaluate it, as we continue with it, we might be able to say, let's do a review here and there. But as a start, it's good. We must welcome it because almost 5 million workers or 6 million workers have benefited from this.
Minister, earlier the President said that your department would be reorientated, no longer just labour but employment as well, putting job creation at the centre. It's no longer about just those labour laws. How has that changed your approach? I
think the emphasis now in the department is to say the labour relations part of it is stable. We've had a number of legislations. All we are pursuing is for them to be implemented properly. However, on the side of the employment, the key challenge for the country is this massive unemployment, to say, what are we going to do to deal with the issue of helping the young people in job seeking, in retraining, in training, and then preparing them for the world of work. So it is about upscaling a number of the programs which we're having sitting in the different departments and making sure that there's coordination, collaboration, and making sure that there are subsidies which we're giving for public-private partnerships with those employers in order to make sure that we are preparing the young people to enter the job market situation. So what is very key now is to ensure that the issue of employment is in the agenda, especially for the young people. Our labor centers, we've changed them to be able to, 165 labor centers all over the country. We have said they must start calling the young people, register them, help them, refer them to the different areas where there is employment, help them with their CVs, prepare them for the interviews, etc. So the issue is that all the various employment programs which are there in the different departments must be coordinated, and they must be upped in order to make sure that there's massive jobs which are being created.
Are 165 centres enough? South Africa is the highest youth unemployment rate in the world, about 53%. That's millions of young people, Minister.
Those might not be enough, but you must utilize the resources which you are having. But you will be shocked that, for instance, one of the labor centers which we have just opened today for the young people here in Cape Town, it was so full that you would have more than 500 people just turning up to say we've heard about this particular center. So they will be turning up in the various centers, and as we continue, we might have to open more of those centers for the young people to go into them and get the necessary information, because information is very critical, and that information is power.
On the bigger issues, according to the World Economic Forum, their competitive reports year after year, we are basically bottom of the barrel. South Africa has the worst labor-employee relations in the world. Surely if company leaders and workers are at odds, and that's what the data points to, that could dampen job creation. What are you doing about that, Minister?
Well, we have one of our entities which we call productivity South Africa. It's a very important entity which is doing a lot of research in relation to how to improve competitiveness, and that research is made available to the various companies in order to help. Because we have to be competitive in this particular world. But also there's this issue which other people keep on raising on the labor market rigidity, and both the IMF and OECD have come up to say there's a lot of movement which takes place between, with the workers in South Africa in between the sectors, which shows that we are not as rigid as other people are saying.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because companies still talk about those rigid labor laws. Bloomberg, the global agency, running a story today that is published globally, speaking to South African CEOs, saying that there's still too much inflexibility. What do you say to those who believe that we could create more jobs if government was more flexible? Okay. Minister, I can see what happened. You couldn't hear me because your earpiece came out. If you can hear me now, I'm saying, what do you say to those?
I can hear you now.
All right, great. What do you say to those people who believe that we are still simply too inflexible? CEOs saying that this is somewhere where South Africa hasn't changed enough. Do you believe there really is enough leeway?
No, they must bring evidence if they say we're too inflexible. And I've just said in a report or research which had been done by both the IMF and the OECD, they are not talking about this inflexibility which people are talking about. The issue is that people are running away from implementing and complying with the labor laws which are there in order to protect the workers, and just think only about profits. It can't be thinking about profits. We must also think about human beings and respect the rights of the workers, and say the workers' rights remain human rights. Therefore, we must respect them. And I'm saying research by a top institution in the world has not been able to say what they are saying.
Finally, Minister, I think you looked at the issue of enforcement today. That's always been an issue. You said that the number of health and safety inspectors to companies is 1 to 20,000. That is just incredible. How is that possible? And what do you say when the SABC, for example, a national key point, is saying it cannot protect workers, it doesn't have funds in place? And I think that could be a problem across SOEs in this country.
We have announced today that we're going to be increasing the number of the inspectors, and we're talking about just 500. But for health and safety, we're talking about 200. But the fact of the matter is, you are having about 1.7 registered employers in terms of the UIF. You can't have a number even half of that 1.7 inspectors. In fact, the number of the inspectors we're having today is less than even 5%. The reality is that we must work in cooperation with the goodwill of the employers who are going to be able to say, let's report problems, accidents or diseases which are there, and let's work to cooperate with the inspectors. But we're also going to rely on the unions. People should not be afraid of the unions, the employers. They must know that if there's sound labor relations, they are cooperating with the unions, there will be productivity in those particular firms. And what we are saying, the shop stewards must play their role very well in terms of looking after the workers and representing them. So if there's cooperation between those inspectors, the department, with the shop stewards and the unions, and together with the employers, we will be able to deal with any malpractice in the employment situations. But you can't expect that we will employ millions and millions of the inspectors. In fact, our current number of the employees would not even cover 10% of what I would call the employer companies which we are having. So it's a question of cooperation and working together.
All right, thank you for looking at a wide range of issues with us. Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi from our studio in Seapoint.